What would a stop on Whiskey Paradise Island be without a visit to one of its most iconic distilleries?
Where are we going?
Caol Ila. Caol Ila.
That's Urs. And that's Marianne. That's Marcus.
Hi, Sarah.
Not only do they produce Kathrin's favourite whiskey, but the view from Caol Ila's visitor centre on the Sound of Islay and the Paps of Jura is just breathtaking. So we thought it would be rude not to visit this heavenly place. But first things first, we get ourselves properly recaffeinated and we try the excellent pies at Copper Still Coffee right outside the Marina. With us are our Swiss friends from the good ship Castella, and together we make the 45 minutes bus ride from Port Ellen northeast to the distillery on the Sound of Islay. In the first half of this video, we take you on a distillery and tasting tour of Caol Ila before we head back to Port Ellen, where Polaris stands strong in the force 9 gusts of a forecast westerly gale before we set sail to Oban.
Fabulous, cool. So this one here is probably the most distinct flavour you're going to find on Islay, to be honest. You'll probably recognise it quite quickly if you know your Islas.
Smoke.
The introduction to the distillery is refreshingly different, with a focus on experiencing smell and tastes.
Trust me, I sometimes ask when people like, I do not like peaty whiskies, and I'm like, that's fine, you know, if that's not for you, you're on the wrong island, but that's not for us. So yeah, this is our smoky flavour. Now, as I said, Islay is famous for our smoke. That's what makes Islay stand out. That's why we have so many distilleries here, because that really peaty, earthy flavour is really popular. Now, Caol Ila does not miss out. We are also peated here at Caol Ila, but we're kind of a more wisps and waves of smokiness. If you go to Ardbeg or Lefroy down south, they pack a bit more of a punch. You get more of a kick in the face when you drink one of them. You feel like an ashtray in your mouth. Very weird. A really nice balance of sweet and smoky flavours. So,
this is a main.
So this is something you will find in Caol Ila, yes.
In
100%,
Oban,
yeah. It's not always super overpowering or overwhelming, but you always get a bit of spice and then a nice bit of warmth, which is really, really good.
A wedding party accompanied an Irish princess who was to marry one of the lords of the Isles. In the princess's entourage was a family of healers who brought with them
here at Caol Ila. So we're first going to talk about the first 5 steps here, and then we're going to go over to the distillery and we'll talk about the next few steps afterwards. So you'll see a lot finer, see all the sugars showing through, is our flour, which you'll see is very dusty and sandy. Now the flour is also very high in sugar, but if anyone knows, whenever you add hot water to flour, it just sort of sticks together and gets all icky and looks like porridge, which is not what we want. So welcome to the Mass House. Because we're about 55, we're leaning a little bit more to the fresh fruit side of things. So a lot of the time you get a lot of sort of citrus notes when you're drinking Caol Ila, so like lemon and oranges, and you sometimes get a bit of pineapple or bananas from that more tropical note flavour as well. And we boil it up kind of like a giant kettle is the best way to describe it. Still a gigantic copper kettle, so it's very warm and still next 90% of the time. So we boil up all the wash. This releases all those alcohol and flavour compounds within the wash. They rise up here as vapours, come down our line arm and into our condenser. Now a condenser is basically a giant copper pipe with cold water rushing around it. So that cools those vapours back into a liquid again, and we call these our low wines. Now low wines are about 25% alcohol, which isn't quite high enough yet, So we repeat that process. We take all the low wines and we'll split them across all 3 of our spirit stills and we'll boil it up again. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? You get the nice smoke through. Whereas if you go to Lagavulin, one of our sister distilleries, they have very short and quite stumpy stills that are quite compact. So they have a much heavier and more viscous whiskey. Because what happens, there's not enough space in the still for all the oils to drop down. So it'll get caught in the whiskey and come down the line arm and just go into their spirit. So each still is quite unique. It's just, I can't fully explain the science, but it's the copper contact effect. That the more the spirit touches the copper, the more distilled it will get. So you'll see distilleries sometimes have a little bulb in the middle of their stills, or quite flat at the bottom, or very, very tall, or short and very wide. Every single part of that is going to change an aspect of the spirit. But the general basis, the taller the still you have, the lighter the whiskey you're going to get, the shorter, the heavier and more viscous you'll get. We also, bourbon is the main one, refill American oaks, and the biggest cask we probably use here at Caol Ila. Everyone remembers downstairs, that sweetness, that vanilla, that all comes from our bourbon barrels, which is really essential. Now you'll all notice, if anyone's paying attention, we have a bourbon Caol Ila here. So, you can come up and give this a little nose, I'll just give you an idea obviously. We'll smell all of them, don't we?
Champagnewein.
Ja, fruchtige.
Und viel, weißt du?
Das Fruchtige kommt da
So my favourite is this one here. This is an example of when you change the process at the beginning, how it comes to right at the end of maturation. Has anyone heard the term chocolate malt before? Chocolate malt? No?
Sounds amazing.
This is a chocolate malt cask, and what they do, they toast the barley at the malting stages. So instead of just peating it or drying it out as you would, they actually char the barley, distill it as usual, and it's supposed to, it kind of creates this like chocolatey, sort of rich mocha flavour at the end of the dram. So again, I'm not quite sure where everyone's from, but here in the UK, we have a Cadbury chocolate bar that is dry fruited nuts, and that just reminds me of that chocolate. So while you're here in Ireland, you can see it, try it. But it just smells like dark chocolate to me, this whiskey. It smells great, it's so lovely. Unfortunately, they don't bottle it, which is quite sad. So we just have it here to smell, which is quite nice. But it's really nice to see how that sort of change at the beginning of the process completely comes through. As I said, with that new make spirit, if you're talking about the perfume sort of smell, really lovely. You do get it at the end of the cask too, which is quite cool. I also want you to open up your mouth as you breathe through your nose. It's going to feel a bit odd, it's going to feel a bit uncomfortable, but what it's going to do, it's going to circulate all the flavours around your sort of palate and your nose and sense of smell, so it'll make the flavours a bit stronger, which is really nice. Now take a sip, have a wee taste, see what you think, let it linger on your palate for 30 seconds. Now, your first dram here, guys, this is our distiller's edition. Now, this is 43% alcohol, so it's not too strong, it's quite soft. Not going to have too much of a burn. Whisk the sherry out and then put the matured bourbon spirit in afterwards. So this one's quite warm, it's quite wintry, it's got like a lot of spices and stuff we were talking about earlier downstairs. It is definitely a wintry dram, I will say that. This one is our distillery only bottle. You can only get it here on Islay, you can't get it anywhere else in the world, or anywhere else on Islay for that matter of fact. It's very hard to come by. Now it's natural cask strength, which means it's 57.4% alcohol. So it is going to have a bit of a catch, a bit of a burn to it. So do take it easy, don't go swigging it because you're going to catch your throat and have a cough. Now this is a vatting of 3 different casks. So we've taken 3 barrels and mixed them all together. The first one is a refill Kentucky bourbon. The second one is a first fill Kentucky bourbon. And then it's finished off with a heavily charred Californian red wine cask. Your final whiskey here, this is our Four Corners of Scotland exclusive. So as you kind of heard about earlier, the Four Corners of Johnnie Walker, we all had a big sort of refurbishment like this one here to kind of all align with each other in that sense. Now this one is a 14-year-old, and we released this bottle to celebrate the reopening of Caol Ila in August 2022. It's 53%, so it's still a cask strength. We'll have still a bit of a strong burn, but not as much as this one. It's a lot easier to drink, this one. This one is a very heavy bourbon influenced whiskey. So what I find a lot of the time, people that don't quite like this one normally prefer this, and vice versa. People that really like that aren't as a big fan of this one. This is everyone's palate's a bit different, but see what you think. It's a really nice one, the 14 there. And if you want to water, see how it changes, 100%. This one's quite refreshing, which is a word I would use for... But what we've done, we've made a cocktail syrup from Lapsang Souchong tea. Has everyone heard of Lapsang tea before? Yeah, it's a nice black smoky tea. So yeah, Souchong tea, it's kind of like a black tea, and it's very smoky. And what we did, we mixed it with sugar, we brewed it, mixed it with sugar, created the syrup, and put the two together. So it kind of creates a sweet, smoky cocktail to almost mimic the flavours of Caol Ila, but without any whiskey in it. So it's 100% non-alcoholic. So it's things like Black Label it's smoky, Double Black is all about the smokiness. So it's a lot of Caol Ila, a lot of like heavily charred cask, woody cask, anything smoky. Oh, it's only
A short walk takes us to the bus stop at Port Askig, where we refresh ourselves with a cold one and a delicious soup at the local hotel pub. Back in the harbour at Port Ellen, a strong westerly breeze with gusts of over 45 knots has beaten up a nasty swell coming into the harbour. The pontoons are bouncing, but the Swiss Navy is securely berthed. Nevertheless, some adjustments on the lines are required to ease the wind pressure on the fenders.
Ja.
Das ist am Mittwoch, ja. Gut. Shortly after 6 on Sunday morning, Castella's just left. They sail up to Oban. They have to catch a flight on Thursday, so they want to be there. The next 2 days are going to be a bit windy. Tomorrow the forecast is gusts of storm force 11 hitting us, so we're going to try to make the best of our lines and secure the boat a bit better than it was.
And get rid of this noise.
As the wind is expected to veer to northwest, we try to tie Polaris off the next pontoon finger. As we are the only visiting boat on the outer pontoon, there is enough space to lay some lines across the berth to take the expected wind pressure off the port side. This should make the boat much quieter, as the fenders and lines should be squeaking much less. And now the storm front has arrived. Last night was very noisy and shaky because we were lying a bit too much on the pontoon with the waves, so we tried to pull Polaris off the pontoon a bit and slightly more forward and fix her much better with the lines. There's going to be quite high winds from the side, so I think if we can make a good almost a spider web where she's picks between the pontoons. That might be a good strategy for tomorrow. This is what we're expecting tomorrow in gusts, like close to 50 knots of wind from the northwest, and
we are here, huh?
we are just right here in Port Ellen. So it's gonna be a lively evening tomorrow. That's about 5 o'clock in the evening, and then it should come down overnight. So the worst will be in late afternoon. We'll build up during the day, and then in the afternoon we will have the worst gusts. It's extremely gusting outside, so at the moment we have 16 knots, but then within seconds sometimes it goes up to, we had a maximum of 48, which is about the forecast, but we only had it once, the 48, so normally it's between like maybe 15 and 35, so which is a 4-5 to 7-8, and that's quite normal. We are well and snug in. The wind comes from the west northwest here, as you can see. That takes us right from the beam, and we are well fixed to the other pontoon, so that holds us off, and it's actually quite okay, quite comfortable. Not a lot of noise and not a lot of bumping. There's no waves because the wind comes just from the land, and there's no fetch at all, so it's quite okay for the moment. And once again, after the storm, there is a beautiful and calm morning. We are preparing Polaris to leave Port Ellen just after sunrise. Good morning. It's today, what's today? Wednesday, the 17th, I think, of April. It's just about probably 7 o'clock in the morning or so. We left shortly after 6 in Port Ellen, and today the plan is to sail up to Oban. We got a nice little wind, about 8 to 10 knots from a beam, and that gives us a nice speed. We're doing about 6.5 through the water at the moment, and the weather should be staying like this, so we hope it's going to be a nice sail today. We've got the autopilot in, course is on, everything is as it should. Now that the sails are up, the boat is much more stable, as to be expected, and Kathrin will try to give a workout class later on, starting at 7:45 down below, so I hope she doesn't get seasick. This is the sweet spot of wind for Polaris. We have 13 knots of wind, quite stable, not a lot of waves, and we're doing 7 through the water and 6 above ground, 6.5 above ground, which is great. Thanks to the marvels of technology, Kathrin's workout session can start even whilst on the way.
Some of the exercises were a little bit challenging, but overall it was great, and it's always, actually there are no excuses. So I enjoy it. It's great. It's a great start into the day.
And whilst Kathrin is doing her workout, I pull in the beauty of nature on this morning. We sail up the well-known to us Sound of Islay, past the notorious Caol Ila and towards Flada Lighthouse. We are on our way to leave Western Scotland. This beautiful cruising area where one could spend a lifetime hopping from anchorage to port, with its dramatic landscapes, abundant wildlife and with its friendly people, was home to us for the past 2 years, and it has left a deep mark in our hearts. Once more, it is time to say goodbye and to let go, an experience and a feeling we know just too well. It's not getting easier with time. My workmates at DDZ Marine have put it with their typical Scottish humour and, I believe, in their way to show sympathy. Leaving is an incredible act of selfishness, a malicious abandoning of loyal friends and colleagues, escaping from a never-ending nightmare. See, also traitor. For us, it never was a nightmare. But feeling slightly as a traitor, we are deeply thankful for the time here with you, Bonnie Scotland. But to discover and to make new experiences, we have to let go. With an open mind for new adventures, we make the last few miles towards Oban and into the well-known to us Kerrera Marina, from where our journey into the unknown will start in the next episode.